ladies, here we are, section 3 of chapter 1, scientific methods. Please take out your ISN. We're going to begin to take our notes. I will periodically go through and highlight some important points. This section is very heavy with definitions, so you need to take your time, stop, rewind, in order to make sure that you get everything that you know you need for the assessments and just for flat out learning. All right, happy note taking. All right, like discussed in class, if it's highlighted up in yellow, you see it at the top. That is something that is the beginning of the section. So you need to write scientific methods and underline it in your ISN. So the objectives of this lesson is to identify common steps in the scientific methods, compare and contrast different types of data, identify different types of variables, and describe the difference between a theory and scientific law. Because this recording is pretty long, we will probably only get through the first bullet, maybe possibly the second one. Some vocabulary that is believed to be a review. You girls know that a review means that we've done it before, or that you know it. And this word is systematic approach. So a systematic approach is an organized method of solving a problem. So basically it's just a way to solve a problem that is organized. You don't just do it. You have a step-by-step way. That's a systematic approach. This is the vocabulary. Yes, it is intense, which is why I'm going through this as a flipped classroom. The main idea: scientists use scientific methods to systematically pose and test solutions to questions and assess the results of those tests. So basically, scientists come up with an organized way to test something, to ask questions, and then to analyze or figure out what those tests mean. As of right now, you shouldn't be writing anything. All right, your first section, a systematic approach. You see it is highlighted. That means you need to write it and underline it. So your first vocabulary word is the scientific method. It is a systematic approach or an organized way used in science. That's all you need to write. The scientific method is an organized way used in science, whether it's chemistry, physics, biology, or any other type of science. Let me highlight that for you, or underline it. So what you need to write, scientific method, a systematic approach used in science. And again, a systematic approach just simply means an organized way of doing something. So it's an organized process used by scientists to do research and provide methods for scientists to verify the work of others. So it's an organized way to do science. It's called the scientific method. Think about it this way, girls. Think about it this way. You have a system that you use in order to get ready to go to school. You don't just wake up and leave out the house. You go to the bathroom, maybe you take a shower, you brush your teeth, you eat breakfast, or you don't eat breakfast. You take your clothes out. So you have an organized way, and the way that scientists do it is called the scientific method. All right, these are the steps in the scientific method. They are repeated until a hypothesis is supported or discarded. So I need to say that again. They are repeated until a hypothesis is supported or discarded. Discarded just means trashed. And discarded simply just means trashed. So a hypothesis, which we'll give a definition for in a moment, is either supported or thrown out. So a scientific approach to answering a question is not right or wrong. It is either supported or discarded. So let's review some of the steps in the scientific method. Here we have observations. Their existing knowledge, qualitative and quantitative data, which we'll talk about in a moment. Then you go to your hypothesis, which is a testable statement or prediction. So it's the question or what you're trying to figure out. Then you have your experiments, conclusions, and if your conclusion is not supported or discarded, then you revise your hypothesis and you go through the experiment process again. If your conclusions are supported, then you move on to the theory, possibly more experiments, a revised theory, and we'll talk about what a theory is in a moment. Or you take your experiments and your theory is a hypothesis supported by many experiments, and then it could possibly become scientific law, and we'll discuss all of this in a moment. All right, so an observation is the act of gathering information. So simply put, an observation is just getting or gathering information. Now, there are two types of observations. The first type of observation is qualitative data. So you can get this data from observations you get from color, smell, that describe color, smell, shape, or some other physical characteristic that's related to your 5 senses. So, qualitative data, you need to go ahead and write this, are observations that you get using your 5 senses. And we know what the 5 senses are: touch, taste, smell, hear, and see. So these are the 5 senses. Think of it this way. Qualitative data is quality information. You want to describe something. So there's no actual concrete. This smells good. This tastes good. I see the boy running. So that is qualitative data. Then we also have quantitative data. So quantitative data is data that you get using numerical observations. And what does numerical mean? Numerical just means numbers. So, numerical observations. And again, what are observations? Observations is just getting information. So you can get your information by describing it, or you can get your information by actually getting hard numbers. For example, how much or how little something is, how big, how fast. You can think of this as quantity, or the numbers of something that you want. Let's use some scientific words. You want to know the temperature. That's an actual number. You want to know the volume of something. That is an actual number. You want to know the size of something. An actual number. So qualitative data, for looking at size. Qualitative data could simply be it is big, it is small, it is brown, it is red. Quantitative data, it is 3 kilograms. It weighs 2 pounds. We don't use pounds. It is 7 meters long. So that's quantitative, the difference between qualitative and quantitative. So a hypothesis. A hypothesis is also considered an educated guess. So it's a possible explanation or answer for what's been observed. You need to write the definition for this, and I want it in your own words. Hypothesis is a tentative explanation for what's been observed. And what is an observation? It's just the act of gathering information, an observation. An experiment is a set of controlled observations that test your tentative explanation. So, an experiment is a set of controlled observations. And what are controlled observations? We know observations is the act of gathering information. So controlled observations simply means that you know exactly how much water is in the beaker. You know exactly how much light is on this plant. You know, controlled. You take control of something, you know what it does or what it is. A variable is a quantity or condition that can have more than one value. You need to write this. A variable, quantity. Remember the word quantity we just talked about. You gather qualitative data. And what type of data is that? Is it a description or is it a number? Quantity is a number. So a variable is a number or a condition that can have more than one value. So it can be big or small. That's the condition. Or it can be 5 meters or 7 meters or 10 meters. Those are all variables. So you have two different types of variables. You have an independent variable, and it is the variable you plan to change. So the independent variable is the variable you plan to change. So this is the one thing that you want to change. Then we have the dependent variable. The dependent variable is the variable that changes because of the independent variable. So here's an example. Does changing the height of the ramp affect the speed of the car going down the ramp? So we want to figure out what is the independent variable, the thing that you can change, and the dependent variable that changes because of what you changed. So looking at this question, first let's talk about your hypothesis. Your hypothesis is what do you think the answer is? Your hypothesis could be, if you change the height of the ramp, then the car will go faster. So that's your answer. The higher the ramp, the faster the car will go. So let's talk about the independent variable. So the independent variable is the thing that you can change. What is that? The height of the ramp. So the height of the ramp is the independent variable. You can change that. So what depends on how high the ramp is? That is the dependent variable. It is the speed of the car. So in this one question, you can determine the independent variable, the thing you can change, and the dependent variable, the thing that changes because of what you changed. So the dependent variable, you have no control over the dependent variable. It happens because of something else. You have control over the height. That is the independent variable. You do not have control over how fast the car goes. All right, so getting to the end. What is a control? So we know what an independent variable is. That's something that you can change, you have control over. And the dependent variable, you have no control over, but it can change. So then we need something to compare it to. So going back to the last example, the height of the ramp, we want to compare it to what? How do we know that it was the height that made the car go fast? So your control is something that is standard that you're using for comparison. So for us, the control would be no ramp. The control is the standard for comparison. So something that you're using to compare. And then we have a conclusion. The conclusion is your answer. What do you think the information tells you? So it's your judgment based on the information that you gathered from the experiment. So we know a hypothesis is never proven. You either support it or you discard it. So it's not right or wrong. And then we know that a model, which was the last sections, can be used to help in making your predictions.